Munster hurling final is one of those great summer days. I mean, for hurling people, it's up there with the All-Ireland final. Thurles, Semple Stadium, hot day usually, tremendous rivalries. You know, it has all those qualities.
It is definitely the most competitive provincial champion left in hurling.
Johnny McDonagh from Tipperary, 41-year-old official.
The atmosphere on the given day is just something else. The expectation of a hard-fought contest, you know, laced with, you know, passion and skill and aggression.
Big hitting, big shoulder, you know, big scrapes, big passion. Every ball fought for tooth and nail. You know, they love to win a ball, they love to rise a ball, they love to rattle off their opponent and then strike the ball 70, 80, 90 yards down the field and a score to come off it.
Hearing about people who travel 4.5 hours to get to a television in Perth in Australia.
You know, you dream about playing in one, and an occasion where maybe playing for Tip against Cork or whoever, the sun shining in Semple Stadium, like that to us is like playing in a World Cup final, really, you know.
It's like Wimbledon in tennis. People, you know, John McEnroe was asked once, why is Wimbledon the biggest tennis tournament in the world? And he said, well, because everyone says it is.
You had a stadium like, you know, Semple Stadium or Páirc Uí Chaoimh. The stands held 30, 40, 50,000 people and they were jam-packed.
It's different to All Ireland's, and I can't explain why it is, but it just is.
Can they go?
There's a party atmosphere. Everybody is, you know, there's an excitement about a Munster final where the match is played but with absolute abandon and energy, and you know, at the end, you know, if you win, great. If you lose, you know, you go in, lick your wounds and come back for another year.
For me, there's nothing around the world, and I've travelled a lot, that compares to the game of hurling. Nothing at all.
It's the place to be.
They say it's the second fastest field sport in the world to ice hockey, which is not a field sport as such.
Kenny, man from Grenada.
It's the combination of hand-eye coordination, of courage, strength, nimbleness, you know, skill to control a ball at pace under physical pressure from an opponent, and strike it when that opponent has 3 or 4 ways of stopping you within the rules. People who reach a certain level of accomplishment will have done so through hours and hours and hours of solitary practice. It's almost like a craft to these guys. It isn't just about being athletes.
What makes it great, really, I think, is the scores. When you can go to other sports, you don't get the ferocity of the scoring that you can get in hurling matches, for example. Football doesn't give it to you, soccer doesn't give it, rugby doesn't give it. And in a hurling match, a team can be 5 points down. In the twinkling of an eye, they can be back on level terms or even go ahead. I think that's what makes hurling great.
And if you can get a full stadium, wherever that is, whether that's a stadium of 5,000 people, 50,000 or 80,000, and that's full with 2 very good, exciting teams, there is no game anywhere in the world that will match it.
It'd been reared, of course, at home on a diet of magical memories and stories about Christy Ring in the pre-television era, and Mick Mackey and Jimmy Doyle and John Doyle, all the famous names from the counties who had played Munster finals. And of course, when we didn't have television at home in those days, you were, you know, taking in everything you heard about these fantastic occasions. And when I came then to that age of going to the games itself, it certainly lived up to all my dreams and beliefs of what it would turn out to be like.
Huge crowds obviously going to it, a lot of different accents from around the country. At that time there was very little colour because you didn't go to matches with jerseys and tracksuits. You went to matches dressed up in your Sunday best.
I grew up just near Tipperary town, which is very much football country really, and we wouldn't have, the only person we would have met who played hurling for Tipperary was Mick Roach, who was travelled for Carol's and who used to call to our shop at home. And I'd remember the day Mick Roach was, I'd know which day he was coming, and I'd be out hurling, trying to hurl all day before Mick Roach arrived, and so he was the only one that I would have met or known. And of course, you know, there wouldn't have been much TV coverage, so, you know, we just, all we had was our dreams of Tip.
Well, the 60s was a different era. I never saw a 60s game. I saw a few videos of the 60s games. It was a different time. It was a time when you could run in and hit the goalkeeper. It was a time when, you know, a job of the backs was to just keep the forwards out. Tip won an awful lot of All-Irelands in the 50s and particularly the 60s. And they came to an All-Ireland like John Doyle won 8 All-Ireland medals. Jimmy Doyle, something similar. But there wasn't an awful lot coming on, so Tip were down for a lot of years.
Well, unfortunately, I was growing up at the end of the great Tipperary era, so, you know, Tipperary played in that Munster final in 1973, and I didn't see them in a Munster final again until I actually played. I played on the team in 1984.
Victory belongs, and deservedly so, to the Premier County. The famine is over.
The 70s was a time of going to the first round and getting beaten every time, and go on to see either Clare playing Limerick or Limerick playing Cork, and you know, Cork had 3 in a row of 76, 7 and 8.
Going out to him. Jimmy very happy with the shot that's low.
Well, I know from speaking to Christy Ring when he was involved with us in the Cork team in the 70s, he certainly got across to us the image of how important the Munster final was in itself, as opposed to an All-Ireland title later on. I mean, he saw Cork as being the top dogs in Munster always and wanted us to be that.
The Munster final, as an institution, has not been inclusive at all. It was a Cork and Tip thing, with Limerick in a supporting role and Waterford and Clare as in a kind of cameo role almost. You know, they had their odd day in the sun. Carey won their only All-Ireland in the 1890s. In hurling, so it just hadn't been a factor, and you know, they're now in the Christy Ring Cup, so they aren't even in the Munster Championship, which is probably, you know, the right level for them.
Being from Munster and going along to them, being from Clare especially, I guess we had mainly only painful memories of them. Yet, any year Clare weren't in it, you tried your best to get a ticket for it.
Munster final was mostly about Cork and Tip, and it wasn't at all inclusive. You know, even though we do say that there were 5 teams in Munster, for many years it was just 2 really.
If Limerick is to win back the Munster title for the first time in 13 years, it will be surely through another major contribution from Gary Kirby.
What I can remember about the Limerick team is they were coming for a couple of years. We were on the wrong end of a couple of roastings from Limerick in National League games, and that both in Kilkenny and Limerick.
They generally would win a Munster final every decade. I mean, the 60s would be an exception for Limerick, but generally speaking, they were on the scene. They were reaching Munster finals on a regular basis.
They had an awful lot of top-class players. I guess the likes of Kieran Carey would stand out, and was a player that I'd say probably would have made any team in any era. He was an exceptional player.
Out of the country to cheer on Ireland was Kieran Carey. The flu he picked up in New Jersey has cleared away, and he plays in midfield.
They also had the likes of Dave Clark and Mike Houlihan.
Stephen McDonagh was one of the tightest, hardest and best hurling cornerbacks in the game at that time. He was tight, he was hard, he was tough, but he was a very good player, a stickler. He was fast, he was skillful, he was always in there. You actually never got away from him.
The Limerick team that developed in the mid-90s, you know, it wasn't developed by accident. I think there was some fantastic players beginning to come through the scene in Limerick. And, you know, I don't think it was. I think it was expected at a time that Limerick were going to make a bit of a burst, you know.
And so taking charge of his second Munster final, Willie Barrett from Ardfillan in County Tipperary. Clare won the toss. They played from left to right in the first half, and this is the 105th Munster hurling final. A terrific atmosphere as ever.
Clare were after giving us a bit of a trimming in this in '93, so we didn't really need any motivation for the Munster final in '94.
TJ Ryan.
They were an exceptional team, and we had great clashes with them, both in the National League even. They used to draw. I remember one day in the league, probably 20,000 people in Limerick to watch a National League game, which was unbelievable. And it was great rivalry, and obviously Clare and Limerick, great proximity to each other. An awful lot of Clare and Limerick people working together in Shannon, and great rivalry built up at that time.
Taking the second time.
Munster finals, you have huge crowds, you know, 50,000 plus nearly at every Munster final. Once the general build-up in the morning comes and goes and you get towards near the game, once you get out in the field, if you can kind of close your eyes to the magnitude of the occasion, and focus on the task in hand. You know, I found that once that was done, and once the ball was thrown in, that you could get on with it.
You know, at that time they were setting the standard along with Clare in Munster, and I think in particular that great score Carey got against Clare in the Munster Championship in Limerick, great solo one.
Stephen Sheedy trying to take it out of the ruck of players, comes to Carey, lovely balance and control. Look at the way he gets away from 3 or 4 Clare men. Great pace as well, partially stopped. Referee says play on. That's a great advantage, and a point accrues for Carey.
It was just one of the great scores I ever saw in hurling, and a fantastic achievement by a great player.
So 11 points to 7 at the start of the second half. Limerick the leaders. They looked strong in that first half. Clare having it to chase it the whole time.
The biggest thing I remember about the Limerick team was that when they started to get this momentum on you, it was nearly impossible to stop them. And I think they're probably still a bit like that, but they used to have still have a terrific following, but when the crowd got behind them and they started playing well, they were a very, very difficult team to play against.
Jim McInerney stopped well, swept into the side netting, however. Steve McDonagh just getting in the way. Gerald Loughlin.
There's Mark and Gerald Loughlin, who was a great player for Clare over the years, you know. Very hard man to keep scoreless. You know, but I did reasonably well. I was happy with it, and, you know, I dealt with the occasion, I think, which was the important thing as well.
So Reliance, will he go for a goal here? And he gets it! Trying to do something about the scoring imbalance. McInerney comes in, fired in by P.G. O'Connell, stopped there by McDonagh. So Reliance again. And there's another one! And it's Tommy Guilfoyle.
Limerick at that time were setting the standard for counties like Cork to get back up to, and it was a chastening experience for me, because, you know, the humiliation experience, the beating they gave us in Cork was a huge shock to the system for all of us who were involved with Cork at that time.
Just to try and finish off the match in rather more devastating fashion.
And it just showed how hurling had moved on from the likes of Cork being traditional power, that the hard work we had to put in to get back to that level.
And it's all over, and Limerick win back the Munster Championship. There were heroes for Dave Mahedy's team in Carey and Mike Houlihan, not forgetting players like Steve McDonagh and Dave Clark as well.
We had an easy enough Munster final, an easy enough All-Ireland semi-final. You know, it was Antrim we played, and you know, I think tougher games, you know, might have been a bit of a help to us.
Dave Clark towards Gary Kirby, caught it well ahead of Hubert Rigney. And he's made the most of it.
They got to the 94 All-Ireland final, and to this day I don't know how they actually lost the game. I was an analyst with RTE, and I was looking at the game.
Would he go for a point? I think he's been instructed to do so. He's going for a goal, and he's got it!
It was dumbfounding, really. With 7 or 8 minutes to go, they were 7 points up, and lost it by 5 or lost it by 7. They really had the game won.
Awfully now feeling that they can turn the tide. But O'Connor's in! It's another one! It's another goal! 2 goals in the space of a minute, and only 4 minutes left. First time as GA president to present the Liam McCarthy Cup to Martin Hanamy of St. Rynagh's in Offaly. Offaly are the All-Ireland hurling champions for the 3rd time ever. What a day.
We came back in '96, and Kieran was captain, and there was a general concerted effort, you know, to make an all-out effort to be successful again. We were training in UL, the training went excellent. Our league campaign was moderate enough, but once we came into the championship again in 1996, you know, we still had the basis of a really, really good team.
So it's the 107th Munster hurling final. Limerick's 4th in 5 years, Tip's 6th in 9. Joe O'Leary from Cork is the match referee this afternoon.
I think the 1996 Munster final, the crowd made a huge difference. And the crowd really got behind him, probably similar to the way the Munster crowd get behind the rugby team now. And, you know, that was just an occasion where I thought the crowd really stood out.
Joe O'Leary there as the jostling starts already, and it's underway, the 107th Munster Senior Hurling Final. Ray
Serious
Ryan
atmosphere. You know, very hard to communicate with your defenders, you know, through the noise level. And sometimes it can be, you know, lonely enough place when you're out there, you know, when the thing might be going against you. You know, you have a huge amount of prying eyes, and, you know, it can be difficult enough at times.
Michael Cleary has it again, trying to provide the father inside there. Declan Ryan looking for the opening point and producing it over the head of Mike Nash. Caught well by Declan Ryan. Support from Cahill, a goal here. He buried it. Liam Cahill. So the first time
Tip absolutely bombarded us in the first half. We went in at half time, 11 points down. You know, Tom let fly and told us go out again. We went out and got the Limerick crowd behind us, got a couple of early scores.
And that half-time break must have been most interesting because Limerick only took a break of about 6 minutes. They were out fast. And here's a chance for their first point from play. And it is scored there by Owen O'Neill in the first attack of the second half. Going by. Awkward angle. George Friend trying to get in a challenge. The shot has got Celio over. It's another point for Limerick.
They started to dominate us around the middle of the field and half-back line. And I think there was a strong wind, I think, if I can remember right, the same day. And they really used that well.
You know, they also were a very experienced team, and you know, possibly a younger team than Tip at the time too. They had been beaten in the All-Ireland in '94, and then they'd been beaten by Clare in '95. So when the momentum got behind them, it was hard to turn it. Actually, Tip did well to turn it in the end to get a draw from that game.
Out as far as Frankie Carroll, one sub to another. Can Frankie with the hero here? He can! He's put it over the bar!
I remember on a personal level having a chance near the end of the game, out near the sideline, maybe to hit the winning point.
This time towards Tommy Dunne. Tommy Dunne with the shot, the angle shot, drops into the arms of Joe Quaid, and it's all over. And they both live to fight another day, which I think is a fair result.
To be honest, you know, once we drew it, I knew that evening, like, that we had the bit between our teeth and the forces with us. You know, once that happened, you know, I think there was only going to be one winner when we went to Cork.
And Tip make two changes in personnel from the drawn-in counter. Paul Delaney returns to left half back, where he began his championship career back in 1987, while Nicky English has started at top of the left. Tommy Dunne is the unlucky one to lose out.
I was lucky and privileged enough to be able to mark Nicky English in 1996, and he was, you know, one of the best hurlers I've ever encountered. Fantastic player. You had Pat Fox, you had John Leahy. Again, likening him to a bit like Clare, some of the best players that have graced the game in any stadiums, you know.
Damien Quigley runs on towards Owen O'Neill, almost over in his stride, has it now, kicks it and scores! A goal for Limerick! Will he opt to lob this one in? He's giving it everything. Right inside, it's a goal! Inside, 2 against 1. Runs on and right hits the post! And the second time he scoops it in! Huge one down towards Frankie Carroll. Runs on to Owen O'Neill, and there's another one! A fourth goal!
Tip didn't play well the second day, and Limerick, I think, scored 4 goals. And, you know, it was impossible to win it after that, probably, you know.
It's all over! Joe O'Leary has given the signal that that's as much as there is to play. And Limerick, who came from the dead 7 days ago.
Everybody felt that Limerick were going to win that replay, and that was as it turned out. But certainly it was one that we felt got away, and it would have been nice to win playing the last Munster final for me personally.
'96, they came up against Wexford in an All-Ireland final and had a man sent off in the first half. Possibly a game they could have even still won, but they didn't. And I think that was their best chances throughout the 90s and since.
And Wexford are the champions. They've won their 6th.
To lose 2 All-Ireland finals in 3 years with a team that would have been good enough to win at least one of those, I mean, it was heartbreaking for them, and they didn't hang around as long as other teams in that era. They had 3 or 4 years under Tom Ryan when they got so close, didn't quite make it, and then they kind of faded away.
Not lost the will to chase.
You know, having played in 3 in a row, it was going to be very, very hard to come back. And in 1997, we beat Waterford here in the first round, and Tipperary gave us a trimming in the semi-final. And I think with the pool of players that got to the 2 All-Irelands, that was the beginning of the end.
They probably should have won an All-Ireland, to be fair, and they will always look back on that era as a time of regret, but they were very good in Munster, and I always think the Limerick supporters are great supporters. They come back time after time, even though they've had a lot of disappointment, and they usually do draw a big crowd, especially to here as well. They bring a huge crowd to Thurles every time they play here.
The players are there, and they have the material to do better. Clearly they're suffering in the city because rugby is going so well. But the city would never necessarily have been the kind of hothouse of talent for hurling in Limerick. It really was the county which produced the players. And the players are there, but they just haven't been able to get it all together, unfortunately.
The mid-90s was a very exciting time for hurling. You know, you had the tip team of kind of the late 80s effectively going into decline. You know, Cork a little bit in, bubbling under the surface, but you had Limerick emerging, and then you had Clare emerging with Ardal O'Hanlon as manager. And we played them in '93 in the Munster final, and that was probably the last dying sting of the, that Tipperary team.
When I started kind of coming into the frame, the Tipperary team of '91 and '92 were starting to ease off a bit or get older. Cork at the time weren't as strong as they are in the last couple of years. I'd have to say Clare were probably the strongest team that we encountered through the late 90s.
Clare's breakthrough was a real, landmark in the history of hurling over the last 25, 30 years. Ardal O'Hanlon himself, who was manager of Clare in '95, had lost 13 Munster finals as a player, selector, in various capacities, a manager, across colleges, minor, senior, under 21, and that kind of epitomised the Clare condition. It was losing. Since the 30s, Munster final had been just a day of heartbreak for Clare. They were destroyed in '94 by Limerick, they were destroyed by Tipperary in '93, absolutely hammered both days. And one of the big things with Clare was that they weren't able to separate the match from the event.
Welcome back here to Semple Stadium for the 1995 Munster hurling final. Thurles, the splendid backdrop.
Football teams, ever since the 70s, had placed a lot of emphasis on physical fitness and on suffering on various hills and so on, and doing laps and training through the winter. Hurling teams still had the view that it was all about skill. It was mostly about skill, and there wasn't a culture of physical suffering underpinning the preparation of hurling teams until Clare in '95. And those Clare players made sacrifices that other players before them from all counties, would never have made. I mean, they were making sacrifices that were unheard of for inter-county hurlers. And that involved, sacrifices like not going for a few pints after games and so on. Daly actually said once that when he started playing for Clare first, their attitude was, whatever we're going to win, it'll be with our clubs, it won't be with Clare. They were prepared to make sacrifices for their clubs because they could see the possibility of glory, but they could see no possibility of glory with Clare, so they weren't prepared to make the sacrifices. Now, that all changed in '95, and under Ardal O'Hanlon, these guys made huge sacrifices and put themselves through enormous physical torture, really.
Not all of us, but most of us had been through the hurt of losing and coming home in '93, '94, and people not wanting to look at you and you were a failure and that sort of thing. And you couldn't buy that experience going into '95. Like, we had been there and we had failed, and it was our for a lot of us. I remember P.J. O'Connell saying to me on the eve of that '95 final that if we lost again, he wasn't going to play for Clare anymore.
The referee today is Johnny McDonald from Tipperary, 41-year-old official, taking charge of his first Munster senior final, and it's Limerick who won the toss, opting to play with the wind at their backs in the first half. From right to left, straight away it's Liam Doyle. Good intervention here by Kieran Carey. Doyle battling back, but the referee says he fouled.
Those players were some of the best players that I had seen, particularly Lohan, McMahon, Davy Fitz and goals, Eddie Baker. They were very strong, talented players. And then up front you had, James O'Connor, Sparrow Loughlin, good players like that. And, it was no surprise, really, that they went on to be as successful as they did.
This nephew of the great Kerry footballer, Ger Parr, and grandson of Jackie, is on his way for Clare against Limerick inside here towards Conor Clancy. Stopped somehow, and that's gone wide, but it's going to be a penalty, I think. David Fitzgerald, here's the goal chance for him for Clare. He scored!
I think when Davy Fitz got the goal from the penalty, it was a huge psychological blow to Limerick and a huge boost to Clare.
And now he's racing back, and the puck out's been taken.
And once that happened, and when the ball was pucked out, Gary was taken out of it.
Fitzgerald's on his way, and Gary Kirby has been fouled by not one, by about 2 or 3 Clare players, I thought.
Baker gave a full frontal attack on Gary.
And when Gary was taken out of it, we struggled up front again. You know, Gary was our tailsman for years and years, like, you know, from frees and from play. He was excellent. And when he was subdued, like, Limerick were in trouble. But, you know, again, going back to my point earlier on, you know, sometimes you can legislate all you want for hurling, but when the tide turns against a team, it's very, very hard to arrest it. Very hard.
I remember I was marking Mike Galligan out there on the half-back line, and I think we got a point. I think PJ O'Connell got another point who had an outstanding game that day, and he got another point, and it probably put us maybe 9 or 10 ahead. And I remember Mike Galligan turning around to me, and I was aware sort of that the time was coming towards the close, because, you know, the stewards are beginning to take place and that sort of thing. And we'd known each other, you know, we'd marked each other up through the ranks, mine or another 21, and he put out his hand to say, you have it now. And, you know, we don't begrudge you it.
I think Limerick have actually accepted that they're going to lose. A number of players there are not chasing anymore. They're just letting the Clare fellas oftentimes instead of pressurising them.
I wouldn't shake hands with him. I was just too afraid that something was going to go wrong. And I remember then our crowd behind the goal there sort of invaded the pitch after the very last score, I think. And I remember shouting up the field at them to get off the field, because I was certain something was going to go wrong, or would the match be abandoned, or would we be forced to replay it because of a pitch incursion or something. And we just were so afraid of that something would hold us back from getting to where we wanted to get to, and had dreamed about getting to all that time. And I don't think I relaxed until the whistle went.
Well, Clare Munster champions! 1932, 1995.
The emotion and, you know, the feeling of liberation, it was extraordinary. I mean, the scenes at the final whistle, the pitch invasion, the kind of knowledge that for the last 5-10 minutes that they had done it, you know, it was a unique occasion, and it kind of it gave the Munster final a whole new life, because here was a team who had been downtrodden, oppressed by the Munster final, and, you know, they'd conquered it.
You know, when they got going in 1995, and when they got rid of the shackles that went the year before them, they were very hard to stop, and that's what proved. And, you know, we were beaten, but we were beaten by a better team in the day as well too.
I'm sure there's a loss there tomorrow in Clare in St Flannan's, and Clare are just about to win. They've won! Clare have won the All-Ireland!
When they came on the scene first in '95, they weren't the finished article by any means. I mean, you could argue that Offaly were the best hurling team in that year's championship, but, you know, Clare beat them in the final.
Well coached by Ger Loughnane. He told us at half-time they'd do it. He said they'd win the Munster. They did. Eat your heart out, Biddy Early. Clare have done it by 2 points, 113 to 2-8.
But certainly by '97, '98, Clare were a super hurling team, and I think they were given credit for that. Obviously, people kind of hark back to their fitness, because that was their calling card.
Páirc Uí Chaoimh is sort of a bowl effect of a stadium. The crowd are very near the pitch, or seem to be anyway when you're playing, and it was huge interest. It was ourselves in Tipperary, and we had never beaten Tipperary in a Munster final, and that day distinctly I remember the noise being, it would nearly choke you, and I remember at half time finding it very difficult to recover in the dressing room. Such was the crowd and the heat, and that's all the stuff that's associated with Munster final. Tip, to give their credit to them, like, they were a good team around that period, and sure, they had the likes of Declan Ryan, Johnny Leahy, Tommy Dunne. Do you know, they were a very good side, and I didn't see ourselves as superior, except that we were always confident that we could win the game, but I didn't see on a given day that they could have beaten us. And we had all worked under Lynn Gaynor for a period in Clare, and Lynn was the manager in '97 for them, and like, we all respected Lynn as an excellent manager and a definitely very good motivator.
If you couldn't compete with Clare physically, you weren't going to beat them. And I can't put it any simpler than that, really. And until Tip did that, we came short on a number of occasions. Now, Tip had good players around that time as well, and as I said before, our hurling really kept us in touch, but it just wasn't enough. And they were able to dictate to us, they were able to dominate us physically in some cases, and it was a real problem for us.
They came with a physicality to the game, but, you know, I'd also like to say no Kilkenny team, and I've never trained on a Kilkenny pitch, training or club match, where there wasn't a big physicality to the game. It may not have looked as in your face, possibly as the Clare physicality, but there was nothing different.
Usually we made heavy weather or winning games. We were a fairly established unit, I think, from 1 to 9. But there was an awful lot of chopping and changing in the forwards.
Forwards at that time were criticised, and in my opinion unfairly criticised, because Clare were shoving over 21, 22, 23 points in the game. Mightn't have been scoring that many goals, but we're shoving over huge scores.
The Sparrows going by over the head of Michael Ryan on towards Ford, and the referee sees them crushed to the net.
Big work rate, massive work rate right from the full forward line out, and I think they possibly have brought the modern game to where it is today, that real fighting spirit.
Just steadying himself, great block down by Anthony Daly.
Clare were a bit better than us, in fairness, you know, we could have beaten them, but I think looking back on it, they were an outstanding team around that time, and we just came up a little bit short against them.
All eyes on the referee to see just how much time he's left. It's all over, and Clare are the Munster champions once again.
Every Clare, man, woman and child, came to Cork this weekend on a mission. Our mission was to show that we're no longer the whipping boys of Munster.
I was acknowledging that we were the whipping boys of Munster. I wasn't making any reference to Tipperary. I thought I was talking about Clare hurling to Clare people. I wasn't making any reference to Tipperary whatsoever. Rod Guiney the following week, when Wexford beat Kilkenny in the Leinster final, he said Clare said it last week and we're saying it now, like, so. But like, Wexford would have had a far bigger tradition of winning Leinster than we would have had of winning Munster.
It's all over.
They were driven, and I think they were driven by probably the first really high-profile manager in the game. That you know, the manager nearly took over from the players.
And I'm delighted this game is going out all over the world, so that people can see just what this mighty game of hurling has to offer. There is no game in the world like the game of hurling. Sherlock Nag, congratulations.
It was an extraordinary period in terms of messianic type leaders, people with real charisma and capacity for leadership. I mean, you had Loughnane in Clare, you had Griffin in Wexford. You know, Tom Ryan in his own way in Limerick had a great knack of getting performances out of players. In Cork you had Barry Murphy, who was an iconic figure. Gerald McCarthy, who was, you know, one of the giants of the game, went to Waterford and, you know, energised that county. And Justin McCarthy followed him, another one of the, you know, another former Cork great.
The profile of a next hurler or next great hurler can influence the next generation of players coming on, and I think someone like Nicky English and Gerald Loughnane and Babs and Brian Cody and all these guys, people very much look up to him, and I think you can actually get the best out of players.
These guys weren't prepared to be held back by county boards either. You know, Loughnane and Clare the same. They knew what they wanted, and the county board were there to facilitate them, which was a change, because over the decades managers and coaches would have been not so much in fear of county boards, but certainly there was a servant-master relationship, and the county board was the master.
Since Gerald Loughnane and Clare came on the scene back in the late 90s, it really raised the profile of managers. They no longer were training a team and selecting a team. Now they were being controversial and calling on the rules and the rule books and Croke Park and the referees, and you know, so they were involved in every aspect of the game now, rather than just training and being selectors. And I think it's continuing that way, that you know, if a team plays badly, it's the manager's fault, and if the team plays very well, it's the manager was great.
I suppose '98 was a year when we had to deliver as such. Getting to the Munster final that year, we beat Tipperary in Cork in the Munster semi-final, and I suppose Clare at the time were the kingpins of hurling, having come out, you know, won their All-Irelands in '95 and successive Munster championships and so on, and were a real strong outfit. But I suppose we didn't fear them as such, because we'd played most of them under 21 a couple of years previous. For the Munster final, I guess we were raging hot favourites. People couldn't see us being beaten that year. We were the All-Ireland champions, and we had won 2 of the previous 3 All-Irelands, and I guess Waterford came, and a bit like we had done in maybe '95, they came with no real pressure on them.
The atmosphere in that match was akin to the Galway Tip All-Ireland semi-final of '89, where there was an unreal atmosphere there of tension.
Aggression was a big part of their game. They made no bones about that. They felt it was important to the way they played, and occasionally it spilled over, as it did in the Munster final in '98, when Waterford met them head on with aggression, and we had a pretty poisonous Munster final replay.
I guess we got a fair bit of stick from the management during the week that we weren't really ready for that challenge, and we allowed ourselves to be bossed in lots of positions around the field and physically dominated, and we were determined that wasn't going to happen in the replay.
Both games were played within a week of each other, and there was murmurs coming out of Clare that they weren't happy with Waterford the previous Sunday, that we were physical and so on and so forth. But you know, we arrived here. It was a very wet day, if I remember correctly, and it was a 2 o'clock throw-in.
I suppose even before the match started, fellas were squaring up to each other, and there was a fair bit of fellas laying down markers all over the place that, okay, you might have got the better of me the last day, but you weren't going to get the better of me this day. And I don't think there was anything too overboard in it, but it did get a bit heated, and the delay at the throw-in definitely contributed to that. Like,
the memory that will stick out to me was the throw-in when Colin Lynch pulled a couple of times over Peter Queally. I think that set a tone for the day. A couple of minutes later, Micheál White and Brian Lohan were at it, and the referee decided to send the two of them off. But you know, it was Clare weren't going to give in that day, and I suppose they thought coming up the first day that they should have beaten Waterford, or would beat Waterford quite handy. But I think they kind of used their physical strengths, you know, to the limits that day. But I suppose we went in 7-5 down at half time, well within the game.
Will he take a corner to go for a goal?
We just didn't play in the second half. You know, Clare, maybe their experience or their fitness or power told in the second half, but I think they ran out quite easy winners in the end by 10 or 12 points.
So, in his 7th campaign as team captain, Anthony Daly lifts the Munster Cup for the 3rd time in 4 years.
I've been at Munster finals that were probably more physical than that down through the years, and there wasn't definitely as much made of it. And obviously, you know, like the phone in the following evening, and you had an awful lot of supporters ringing in, and subsequently you had investigations and all that sort of thing that went on.
'98 was an All-Ireland they possibly could have won, and you know, they got caught up in a lot of I suppose stuff around that '98 Munster final with Waterford, and I think they left a lot of energy there.
Things contrived against us to win that All-Ireland that year, but it was a great sense of satisfaction winning that Munster final. That was a real good feeling after winning that one.
They were the team of the decade, there's no doubt about that. I mean, to come from where they came from and to be actually winning Munster titles and All-Ireland titles was a phenomenal achievement. I think once they made the breakthrough, they were a superb team again. And I think what was so good about them was, you know, their belief and their character that they showed after, I mean, so many years of setbacks. And a lot of those players had very, very bad days with Clare. And I think, you know, it's a testament to their character and their belief in themselves that they were able to get over those disappointments and come back and play such wonderful hurling and become such an admired team, which they were.
They were our benchmark for years, and we measured ourselves against them, and we knew if we could compete with them that we could compete with anybody. They were, in my opinion, they were an outstanding team.
Once Clare did conquer the Munster final and conquer the whole you know, the whole dynamics of the occasion, they were quite royalist, if you like, in their own view of it. The Munster finals that they won afterwards were their most cherished achievements. I mean, Clannad in his book makes that clear. His two favourite victories were the Munster finals of '95 and '97, over and above the All-Irelands. And but you know, their breakthrough gave hope to Waterford, who came along 3 years later and went very close, and eventually hit their breakthrough in 2002. And you know, it gave hope to other counties like Wexford around the place. But it gave the Munster final a whole new life, that's for sure.
When I took over the Cork team after a year, I realised that Clare were the benchmark, that they had set new standards as regards fitness, self-preparation, the intensity of their play, the pace of the way they played the game. I think that was it. I saw them training in Park Keefe on one occasion before a Munster final, and I couldn't believe the pace that they were training at.
Jimmy certainly would have felt that there was no future with the older guys. In his first year when he came in, he kept on guys who were at the end of their careers, guys around 30, that age bracket, and they were finished, they were past it. So he quickly realised that he had to blood new guys. And in the first round in '99 against Waterford, he gave 6 guys their debut, which was a real gamble. 6 young players playing their first match together in the Munster Championship against Waterford, who were one of the favourites that year. But that team, those players, were used to winning. They'd won a minor All-Ireland under Jimmy in '95. They won 2 All-Ireland under 21s in '97 and '98. So they had that kind of winning mentality.
That's a nice pass.
They were a team that were managed and coached by Jimmy Barry Murphy, and obviously he was a great stylist and a great ball player himself, and had great pace as a player. And I remember him playing and being one of my heroes as a young lad. And they played in that sort of style. They were very quick. Like, they had players like Alan Brown who could mix it up with the best of them, and was a very tough physical player and could stand in alongside Brian Lohan and catch ball. But they went for a sort of a fast, quick ball approach.
Other teams had a very physical approach, very strong. And we looked at, we just didn't have the players in Cork of that type of physique. So what we decided to concentrate on was bringing through young players, and we brought in a lot of young players with skillful hurlers like Ben O'Connor, Joe Dean, Shawnee McGrath, and Wayne Sherlock. All these guys who were, fantastic hurlers. And I thought it could be blended in different ways. You didn't have to have all powerhouse players or big, strong men.
The referee is Dickie Murphy. It's Clare who won the toss and up to play from right to left.
When that game was in the melting pot, Shawnee McGrath and Neil Ronan put over a couple of points on a day where, no one was able to score really. It was a tough day. They put over a couple of points that, you'd put them on any video or DVD and show them to, for the rest of your life, because they were fantastic scores. So, yes, they bucked the trend a little bit, but they also had a great physical nature to their team, and you only know about that when you're actually playing the game. I mean, Sean O'Halpine, who's one of the most skillful players in the game, there's no one tougher than Sean O'Halpine. You have Dermot O'Sullivan, who's a big, tough, rugged fella. A lot of fellas say he goes over. I've never seen Dermot Sullivan pulling a dirty belt.
We scored a fantastic goal, and it was something, reminiscent of the great Cork forwards of past years.
Having put his trust and his faith in a very young team, as I say, 14 of them playing in a first Munster final. That's Fergal McCormack. McGrath got back, and it's Dean!
I think Shawnee McGrath kept the ball in play with a superb flick back down the town end here, and Joe Dean finished it at the net very bravely. It was a great goal.
At half-time, I distinctly remember Gerard having a huge go at Ollie Baker, that he wasn't performing that well, and I think if you look back on that game, for the first 20 minutes of that second half, Ollie Baker just took over the game.
Gilligan fires it back there, and that is Ollie Baker.
He was playing directly in front of me in centre field, and he just took over the game. He caught everything in the air, and Cork, I think, moved 3 different guys on him on the day, and none of them had an answer to him.
And Ollie Baker takes it back, and Ollie puts it over the bar once again. Well, whatever Gerald Loughnane had to say at half-time, he's down along the sideline, pacing there, clenching his fist from time to time. The great man who has led them to so much success.
At the time, Ollie's ankle was beginning to get dodgy, and he went over on the ankle and had to go off, and I think that had a huge bearing on the game. And I remember we missed a close-in free here, and there's probably a few small things swung it, but to be fair to Cork, they were hungrier and they possibly wanted it a bit more. And
even though we made hard work of it, we finished off with some fantastic scores from play. I think Ben O'Connor picked up one brilliant point towards the end, which, put the seal in our victory, and it was a really special day for us.
O'Connor gone, and O'Connor has put it over the bar. And the captain takes the cup, takes the salute.
I remember our bus wouldn't start outside after the match, and everyone's sitting on the bus, and we decided anyway, with myself and Fergal Hegarty, that we'd walk up the town for a pint, and we'd surely get a lift home with somebody even if the bus starts. So we left our gear in the bus and walked up the town. We were having a quiet pint with the hats down over our faces in a pub in Thurles that was absolutely jammed with Cork people, and there was a jukebox there, and they were all dancing, young lads that were dancing, and they were in huge form. And I remember an old fella, well into his 70s anyway, coming up to me and saying, to take that cap up off your face, boy. He said, look at him. He said, that cup used to be thrown into the boot of the car. He says, you're after putting manners on him. And it was a great incident for me, and I always look back on it, that's how much the face of Munster had changed with ourselves in Limerick, that Cork were so thrilled to get back and win a Munster final. I don't think they'd won it since '92, and that was a long gap for Cork, and it just showed to me the significance and of how far Clare had come in the previous few years.
Chances so far, 3 for Cork.
I knew that when we made the breakthrough in '99, I really felt that was the end of that Clare team, because the fear factor was gone. They no more had the aura about them that they had before that, and I think our pace and the level of skill that we brought to the game that day brought us onto a new level again and went beyond what Clare had been at that stage.
A day of triumph for Jimmy Barry Murphy.
But they went to Croke Park and, they didn't, they played without fear, and they beat Austria in a great semi-final, beat Kilkenny in a poor final, but it was a great game for them to win when they were complete outsiders.
That was the most enjoyable aspect for me in '99. We won the Munster title and All-Ireland, was that we won it, I thought, playing a typical kind of Cork hurling, I suppose, with tremendously skillful players and mixing that with a fantastic fitness level and attitude.
Welcome back to Leeside, Lee McCarthy. We've missed you a lot.
They showed that hurling, you could play nice hurling and win championships. So we definitely took notice of that, and it gave us hope, I think, really.
When I took over as manager, Tip had they had won, a minor in 1996, and they had they had been competitive in under 21 in 97 and 98. In the second year, Tip got to the Munster final against Cork and Thurles, and Cork had come off the All-Ireland success in 1999, so possibly was a chance. I think there's a huge atmosphere about a Munster final, and particularly in Thurles. Now, I don't necessarily subscribe to the theory that Tip have a better chance of winning in Thurles, and therefore the Munster final shouldn't be played in Thurles. I think Tip are actually under more pressure in Thurles than they are anywhere else. And I think just from a Munster final perspective that the best Munster finals I can remember have been played in Thurles.
This place is unbelievable, but we've never won a Munster final here, so the memories would be better if we won here, but this place is just unbelievable.
I remember an old fella saying to me, if you couldn't hurl out there, you couldn't hurl anywhere. And there's no excuses for not playing well here, the size of the field, and there's so much history attached to the place.
It's a fantastic arena. It's really an amphitheatre. Brilliant sod. In the warmest of summers when you'd come to Thurles, you'd always get a coat of grass in the field, which makes it a lot easier on the feet. Some of the other venues, the ground tends to dry out very much. But Thurles is an absolutely fantastic place.
I don't think the Munster final should be anywhere else, only Thurles. To me, the whole occasion, both in the town itself and the morning of the game, the whole build-up to the game, it's the only venue, as far as I'm concerned, that allows the Munster final to be itself for the day.
Even the Cork lads, they don't ever mind coming up here to play Tip because they love the venue and they love the field, and it's a fantastic place and a real sense of occasion as you come in the road here to the Munster final.
It's Tipperary who won the toss. They played from left to right in the first half. Paddy O'Brien and Eugene O'Neill have switched positions, and Pat Horan gets the game underway, the 111th Munster hurling final.
Well, after winning an All-Ireland final in '99, I think there was a lot of speculation that the team mightn't retain that hunger that they would have the following year, and it has been hard to retain All-Ireland titles over the past number of 10 years, we all know that. But the team were very young still, and I had a fierce ambition to come back here as a coach, and if we could get Tipperary in the Munster final in Thurles, was my dream to beat them here in Thurles.
The whole 2000 Munster final actually took on a life of its own. It was Tip and Cork again. It was the first time they had actually played in a Munster final since 1991, and people were expecting this massive game again, and I think it got to the Tip players more than it did the Cork players. The Cork players were a bit more experienced.
Tip didn't play well at all on the day. We hurled in fits and starts. I don't know whether it was the occasion that got to us or what, but we didn't play well. We were no way fluent, and that was disappointing.
Pat Ryan in there.
They made plenty of mistakes, as you will when you're inexperienced. Tommy Dunne got a couple of the greatest goals that were ever scored in Munster finals that day.
The puck out was taken really quick.
I was playing right wing forward at the time. A high ball came. Liam Cahill went to it, I think, with the corner back and pulled. The ball just broke into my stride, and I just got it at full speed. And Wayne Sherlock was following me. I just switched to the left at the last minute so that he wouldn't get a hook on me, and the ball flew into the top corner.
Brilliant shot! Oh,
we were still in the game in the second half, but we were playing second fiddle to Cork, so I ended up in full forward. There was a lot of changes. Eugene had the ball, I could see him coming in, he was about 10 yards away from me, and I just called him, I said, Eugene, and he saw me and he just threw me a nice little hand pass.
Inside it goes to Tommy Dunne. Brilliant goal.
I struck the ball really well, and it felt good, you know. I was happy with the 2 goals, you know.
Game over. It's all over, and Cork are the Guinness Munster hurling champions for the 2nd year in succession.
We were beaten, we drove 17 wides, we missed 2 penalties, and we were beaten by 3 points. So you can work it out for yourself why we didn't win that one.
But really Cork, you know, were deserving winners on the day. But that experience that those Tip guys got in that Munster final stood them in good stead the following year.
I thought it was a fantastic achievement to come back and win a 2nd Munster title in 2000, which I thought was a very, very young team still, and it was a tremendous Munster final the same day, great skill level, and you know I got great satisfaction because Nicky English, who was a great hurler and great opponent of mine and player I admired immensely over my career, and I was delighted to be able to put one over on Nicky on the day, so it was a great kick in that for me. But I would say the ultimate thing for me is beating Tipperary in Thurles.
They won the All-Ireland in '99 for the first time in 9 years with a really young team, and people felt that they'd be around for a while. And that wasn't the case. They lost an All-Ireland semi-final in 2000, which they were hot favourites to win. They lost the first round in 2001. They lost the first round in 2002 and were beaten badly in the qualifiers. And there was terrible disharmony in the camp that year. There was a poisonous atmosphere behind the scenes. But there was a core of players who were strong-minded, strong-willed. They were courageous enough to take on the Cork County Board, which is one of the most powerful institutions in the GAA. And they did it in a way that hadn't been done before. You had little skirmishes over the years in various counties, but never an all-out strike.
Something had to be done, and Cork made a stand, which was great for all other players because it gave everyone else in the country said to themselves, they're taking a stand and we'll row in behind them.
Wants it onto O'Hanlon, has it, awkward angle.
The whole outlook was, we are elite athletes. We want to be treated like elite athletes, and we will perform like elite athletes. And you know, I think ever since the mid-90s, preparation in hurling has been going on to a new level all the time, and any team that stood still was going backwards. And that was another example of a team who were moving, you know, were moving on, were moving the boundaries again. As Clare had done in their own way in the mid-90s, now Cork were doing it in 7-8 years later.
Cork had scored a victory, and Cork are champions of Munster for the 49th time.
The Cork team of the past 6 or 7 years have been ultra-professional in the way they approach the game, both on and off the field. Their dedication has been exemplary, and that has transpired itself. You know, they've won a couple of All-Irelands, won a handful of Munster titles, and you know, it doesn't surprise me. Cork will always be Cork, and the way that they approach things and the professionalism, you know, it's a benchmark for every other team.
Tipperary had been down for 10 years, almost 10 years. They hadn't won the All-Ireland since '91. A bit like Cork, the 90s passed them by, and they'd fallen behind.
Well, I thought Nicky English, when he took over that Tipperary team, again, like myself, when he took over Cork, had a very, very hard task because, you know, it's not an easy road back, and I think he managed to bring in his own style of leadership to that team, his own stamp on the team as regards skill levels and proper behaviour. Very disciplined team, very, very well behaved and on the field of play, but playing with great Tipperary passion and skill. He brought all that back into Tipperary, and I suppose Tommy Dunne in many ways was one of the classiest hurlers of the whole era, and he epitomised that team for me with the level of skill he brought to that team and the scores he got for them.
Clare came on the scene around 94, 95, and it took us that amount of time to actually reach where they were at physically, at the physical intensity they were able to play the game. At that stage, Clare were the benchmark for most teams. Certainly in Tip, they were the benchmark you had to reach to have any serious intention of winning anything. Nicky came on board in the autumn of 1998. From that point on, our preparation changed. You know, so we had a lot of physical work done in 98, 99 and 2000, and I think when Jim Kilty came in 2001, I think he inherited a group that had a huge amount of residual fitness carried over, and the SAQ really seemed to complement that. SAQ is speed, agility and quickness, And it really the emphasis is on all those words, and all your training is geared around the speed, the agility, the quickness, because I suppose when you break down games like hurling in particular, all the work is done over short distances, whereas before the old-fashioned way of training was to run up the side of mountains and do laps of the pitch and 400 metres and 800 metres, whereas the emphasis in recent years has gone away from that to shorter work, and the SAQ, you know, is researched and is scientifically proven to really help players and competitors in that sort of environment, you know.
It's Limerick against Tipperary, and the 112th Munster Hurling Final is underway.
Our training was less on the physical side in 2001 than it had been in years before. I think we really enjoyed that, and I think we were able to express ourselves a little bit more, and you know, the training didn't seem to be as hard on us, and we didn't seem to be as tired after it. And I think we had 5 games I think in the championship that season, so it just seemed to come at the right time for us, you know.
2001 again was a carry on to, I think, the way Nicky played the game himself. I think his emphasis again was absolute ball play, absolute be as skillful, be at the top of your game as possible, and you know, he really had his own mark on the game. The way he played, he had it in his players. Again, nothing soft with players, absolutely nothing soft, but a real want to play the game and not be involved in any real physical stuff, not be involved in that at all, play the game, and it ultimately proved successful for him.
He's done well. Back to Kieran Carey.
And whether you won the All-Ireland or not in 2001, you had to win the Munster final, so that's where the real pressure was. And they were going in against, you know, as hot favourites into a team. You know, Limerick are always a dangerous team.
Begley's here as well. Still they try to feed it into space. Chance of a goal! Here comes O'Mara once again. He's got support. Declan Ryan coming in, and there's a goal here. Surely!
You know, Larry Corbett got a goal, Declan Ryan got a goal, and where Limerick weren't getting the goals, Tipwith, their forwards were always able to eke out a score easier than Limerick were able to do it. And my main memory of the day was how hot it was. It was one of the warmest days I can ever remember Munster final being played, and I was delighted actually that they did get over the line, and you know, it was nice to see Tommy Dunne and guys like that, Brian O'Mara, who was man of the match on the day, Brendan Cummins, who'd been playing for a long time for Tip, since virtually I had finished up, or before I had finished up, since '93. Eventually getting the Munster medal after 6 or 7 years playing.
They were unbeaten in every game they played that year, tournament games, challenge games, league games and championship. And they won a lot of close games, which was something that they hadn't been doing. Tipperary had lost a lot of close games before Nicky came in, but that year they won a few real tight battles, including the final.
Ultimately, when you came to the All-Ireland semi-finals against the Offaly's, the Kilkennys, the Wexfords at the time, I think there was a bit more skill necessary, that you had to actually be sharp or be more adaptable. And I think ultimately when that Tip team won their All-Ireland in 2001, that they played a different brand of hurling.
He brought them back from a situation where they were losing first rounds to Waterford to a situation where they were the top team again and All-Ireland champions. In a year when it was very competitive, there were 4 or 5 teams who had realistic chances of winning the All-Ireland in 2001. Unlike now, where it's gone back to 2 or 3 teams. That was a very competitive championship, and Tipperary were worthy winners. The following year, they reached the All-Ireland semi-final and were beaten. Nicky quit, and Tipperary went through in 2 or 3 difficult years after he went.
We were at our best in 2002, 2003, and won All-Irelands at that stage. We only barely beat Tipperary along the way, so you could say that, you know, there was potential for them to win an awful lot more at that stage as well.
Counties who were aspiring to success saw as a route to success bring in an outside coach. Gerald would have been the first really high-profile guy that they had, and a guy who, as a player and as a coach, was associated with success all his career. And when he went down there, the first night that he walked in, Ballygunner players weren't there because they were preparing for a club match, and they felt it was more important to train with their club than go to the first meeting with Gerald McCarthy as the new Waterford manager. That was the outlook in Waterford, as it was in Clare.
Gerald being a high-profile coach, an excellent player in his own era, a very decorated hurler with, I'm not sure how many All-Irelands he has, but you know, a fantastic man within the GA. But I suppose he brought his own personality to it, which would be one of you know, discipline. But I suppose training was the main thing. He brought the discipline to training, and the quality of training was probably his main attribute.
They didn't quite make the breakthrough under Gerald. Gerald made them competitive again. They reached an All-Ireland semi-final. They reached a Munster final, which they lost after a replay. And then Justin McCarthy came in, and in his first year finished the job, won the Munster final against Tipperary in 2002 with a fantastic performance.
Justin came in and improved everyone's hurling, improved the striking, improved the quickness of the striking, and therefore improved the confidence, I suppose, of the players. Like, the quicker you can strike the ball, you know, the more confident you'll be. So from that point of view, Justin brought in more hurling into training, quality hurling, good drills, you know, and probably gave the senior players more chance, you know, he kind of encouraged them more to express themselves more on the pitch. Don't be limited to one position, or you know, don't be afraid to try things with your hurling.
We're going to cue you into reliving those great moments this year as Waterford took on Tipperary in the Munster hurling final. Ger Canning is your commentator.
Tipper unbackable favourites to play Waterford. I was always very worried about the game, to be honest, because Waterford are, you know, they've some of the best players around at the moment are playing on the Waterford team. At that stage, nobody had even heard of John Milan.
There was definitely talent in Waterford. Very shrewd manager in Justin McCarthy. An awful lot of groundwork done by Gerald McCarthy, the current Cork manager. You know, again, a lot of highly skillful players. You know, Paul Flynn, just maybe to mention one. You know, brilliant players. Fergal Hartley was an excellent player as well with Waterford for the year. Stephen Frampton, and they led their renaissance of Waterford hurling.
We had hurled these lads before at minor and 21 level, and had just as much success against them as they had against us. So why not do it at senior level?
Milan has it again. It was a very wet day, very slippy, but their first touch and their skill on the day was fantastic. Now, I thought, you know, Tip maybe were a bit complacent. It's hard for a manager who's talking to a team 2 or 3 times a week to beat a population in a county who's talking to them every 5 minutes saying, well, you're going to win this game. And it was a really dangerous game, and that's the way it turned out.
Nicely inside here towards McGrath.
Like, we realised there's nothing to fear. There was players on the Tipperary team that day that we thought, you know, would they get on the Waterford team? So from that point of view, we just knuckled down and tore into them, and we got a lucky break in the first half. We got a goal, and we went in at half time, I think 4 or 5 points down, playing into a strong wind, and realised at half time, but these guys are very beatable.
Stephen Brenner from the De La Salle club. That is a huge free.
We had played really well in the first round and second round, and just fell away a bit in the Munster final. And Waterford really peaked on the day, and they just burnt us really in the second half. They ran everywhere.
That's a great pass. And once again, it's lashed over the bar.
I remember at one stage distinctly going to talk to one of the Tipperary cornerbacks, more or less, to admonish him for something or other. And I remember Owen McGrath sliding out for a ball, and I don't think if he went to, you know, it was one of the best things I ever saw done. The ball skidded off the grass in front of him, and within a foot he caught it and was up and passed it off to someone and put it over the bar.
Milan balancing. The contortionist has put it over the bar.
I remember Ken McGrath just controlling the ball with his first touch and straight over the bar, and like it's hard to beat that kind of skill, and when it's working so well on the day.
And they said the famine was over. The famine is now over. Waterford are the Munster hurling champions. First time since 1963.
The first Munster Championship game I played didn't go so well against Carey in Welsh Park in '93. So 10 years down the line, you know, all the training, all the defeats, you know, all the bad days coming out of Thurles or Páirc Uí Chaoimh or Limerick.
The bonfires burn.
That great day we had in Cork in 2002 probably made up for most of them.
Fergal Hartley, it was fantastic on the day there, but then of course even more so when you actually brought the trophy back to Waterford itself.
Yeah, I think for all the players that was probably one of the proudest moments of our lives, to bring the cup over the bridge first and foremost into Dungarvan on the Sunday night and then into Waterford on the Monday night. I think it's 2 nights that we'll never forget as long as we live.
Not just for yourselves, of course, but I suppose for family as well, it's fantastic.
Yeah, for family it's fantastic, but like the reception we got when we came into Dungarvan, I think there was about 15,000 there and about 25,000 then in Waterford the following night. And to be fair, I think Waterford supporters have been very, very loyal over the years, and it's what they deserved. And I don't think those kind of crowds will turn out in too many counties.
2004 was, you know, Cork had probably left the All-Ireland behind them in 2003, and, you know, 2004 was going to be their year of redemption and so on. So, having got to the Munster final, we didn't have any great fears against Cork, but our main objective was get to the All-Ireland. You know, the Munster final was a bonus as such.
Ben O'Connor here, playing it forward.
2004 started badly first. Cork had a very soft goal in the very first minute. And it was really the turning point in the game, because you could see 5 or 6 of our teammates just saying, this is not going to happen today. You know, in fairness to Dan Shanahan that day, he dragged us through the first 20 minutes with an awesome display of score getting, you know, catching the puck outs and kept over the bar. Like, I mean, it was, in fairness, only for him, I think Cork could have possibly had an 8 or 10 point lead at half time. Owen Kelly got a fantastic goal going down the wing and cutting across.
Owen Kelly, second time of asking, in along the end line. A chance and a goal! It's exactly what Waterford needs!
So we went in at half time. I'm not too sure. I think we went in 2 or 3 points down, maybe, having an awful start. So at half time we kind of said, look, we're playing into the breeze. We're going to have more room in the forward line to manoeuvre and maybe, you know, create our own goal chances in the second half. No sooner had the ball been thrown in, unfortunately, after scoring a great point, John Malang got a red card.
Yeah, it's red.
So, having suffered a kick in the teeth at the very start of the game, here we were facing another one just in the second half. But, you know, fortunately for us, John's departure actually left more room inside for the 5 forwards that were left in there that day. And I think Cork deployed Dermot O'Sullivan as the extra man, and Dermot was kind of caught between the full back line and half back line. We actually played quite well with the 14 men, and Owen Kelly, Seamus Pendergast and Billy McGrath carried a lot of ball from the middle of the field through their half back line.
Steadying scores, they're still very much in it. Owen McGrath, player of great talent, to Paul Flynn.
Paul Flynn is a kind of an enigmatic figure in that, you know, extraordinarily talented guy who over the years suffered from inconsistency. One day he would go out and be a match winner. He could win a game on his own, and the next day he could be quite anonymous or peripheral and frustrating for Waterford supporters and for his supporters. But Flynn was just kind of mercurial talent and a kind of, you know, a kind of an Eric Cantona almost. He had this flair about him, and, you know, this capacity to do the unexpected. I mean, his performance in the Munster final in 2004 was one of the great performances of modern times, when Waterford were reduced to 14 men, and he was exceptional that day in the second half, and, you know, turned that game for Waterford.
The match was kind of slipping away from us at the time. I think Cork were 2 points up and playing with the wind and with 15 men, and Joe Dean and Ben O'Connor were making big headway down in the Cork full forward line. So I suppose something happened a couple of years back in Ballygunner. Used to be a rivalry for training, believe it or not. I think Wimbledon was on at the time, and we started trying to cut the ball and spin the ball, and so I connected with one of these balls and it kind of dipped into the net. From then on, we kind of started experimenting.
Flynn goes for a goal, he's got one!
It was kind of a, you know, 50-50 effort, you know, go for the crossbar type of thing. If you miss hit it, it'll go over the bar, and if it dips, there's always a chance someone can get a hurley on it, or the goalkeeper could drop it, or in that case it flew into the corner of the net.
And that is it! Waterford have won the Munster hurling final for 2004 by just a point in as fine a game as you're ever likely to witness.
Waterford went on to win that Munster final. It possibly damaged them in the end, because that particular year Wexford won the Leinster final, so Waterford had to ultimately come through Kilkenny in the semi-final, whereas if Cork had you know, won the Munster final, they'd have had to play Kilkenny in the semi-final. So by winning the Munster final, Waterford got possibly a harder draw.
I think Waterford, when they did get out of Munster, they were a little bit unlucky that they had this big local rivalry with Kilkenny. you know, and a couple of times that they met Kilkenny. And while matches were close, even though Kilkenny didn't play particularly well, Waterford didn't either. And it looked as if this hoodoo of Croke Park that everyone spoke about used to come back to haunt them.
To have the players to win an All-Ireland, I believe, their problem has been in semi-finals. But their performances in semi-finals have been getting better. Their performance against Cork in 2006 was really good, and they came so close. The performance against Kilkenny in 2004 was good, and you can see a progression, but time is running out for them. I mean, for guys like Paul Flynn, Tony Brown, Tom Feeney, they're coming to the end of their careers.
Paul Flynn, I thought, was the best minor hurler I ever saw playing in any county, and he went on to play some fantastic games for Waterford in that period over the last number of years. I still think he has an awful lot to offer the game. Ken McGrath equally, Tony Brown. I mean, they'd be just players that I would have so much admiration for the way they play the game and their, you know, the belief in their own county. And I would love to see them adorning Croke Park on All-Ireland final day again, or even winning another Munster title. Would be fantastic, because these players deserve it.
They win the All-Ireland. They'll go close.
I would say honestly that if Cork weren't winning All-Ireland, Waterford would be my favourite county as regards a team now to make the breakthrough. Would be fantastic for hurling if they did, and I think they're a team that deserved it.
I think it is a unique occasion, and there's a lot of talk now about hurling being changed round and maybe the provincial championships being gotten rid of, and I think it's the Munster Championship is really keeping it going really, and it's the one area in hurling that really has held on to its old values, and the 5 teams in Munster that are in contention really want to win it every year.
There are 5 teams who have a realistic chance of winning it, and that wasn't the case 20 years ago. It wasn't the case in the early 90s. If you go back to the 80s, 90s, you had 15,000, 10,000 at semi-finals in Munster. But now you have big crowds at virtually every game in Munster. 30,000 would be kind of a base figure.
It was a fantastic year for hurling, because it brought a whole number of new counties to the table as regards what success meant in winning Munster titles and All-Ireland titles. I think, in fairness, when they won those Munster titles, it gave those counties a sense of achievement, and it was fantastic for hurling in general, I think, and everybody wants to see hurling being spread around these counties, really.
The most exciting time was obviously when they came up against Clare in the championship, because they brought that new absolute enthusiasm, support, everything to the game, and if you were to beat Clare at their best, you really won a match.
Clare and Limerick were the 2 dominant teams in Munster in the 90s, and you know, we won 3 Munster championships. I think they won 2, and it's changed times really now. Again, you probably have Cork and Tip back dominating, and Waterford maybe to a slightly lesser extent at the moment.
Clare now have been on the scene for 10-12 years, regularly competing in All-Ireland semi-finals, and people take Clare for granted as a competitive force. But people forget where they came from and how bad they were in the early 90s. And for that team to make themselves into All-Ireland winners, to make themselves so hard to beat for the next 5 or 6 years, and for that group of players and management to force every other team in the country to look at themselves and revise the way they prepare, that was a huge achievement, you know, and they really changed the face of hurling.
Daly accepts the Munster Cup, and Clare are Munster champions once again. Beware the rest of Ireland. Clare are on their way. Nowadays, there's a huge level of support. Hurling may be essential. The Sparrows going by over the head of Michael Ryan on towards Ford, and the referee sees them crash to the net. Up towards Shabby. Lovely break of the ball to Tommy Dunne. Tommy's now in right half forward. Ben Sherlock's after him. Brilliant shot. Oh, it's Tommy Dunne. And they said the famine was over. The famine is now over.